Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live-streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast has been coined by Bridgie, Smotherhood, the lean back skill set.
Yes. So Smotherhood. I don't know if anyone else has heard this term before, but it just popped into my head and I thought, what a great way to describe where our motherhood or mothering has become a little toxic, a little smothering, a little sticky, uncomfortable, enmeshed, right? And I thought, well, let's look at perhaps patterns where we've found ourselves down this path, what creates it as well. Very often it's a big mother wound. So we go the opposite way. We perceive that we were challenged growing up and lacked mothering. And so we'll do the opposite to ensure our children don't feel the way that we did. But the problem with smotherhood is that we can lose our identity in our children. And our children can be, robbed sometimes of their own necessary individuation and differentiation from us. So that's what we wanted to give you today, was this lean back skill set if you find yourself in this place of smotherhood.
Yeah, gosh, I honestly just love your words as we sit here. And when you first proposed this subject to me before we hit record, I was like, okay, can you just open it up for me a little bit more? And I'm just going to use some of the words that you used, and I'm going to say to you, just to tell me where that lands for you, because it's just something about the words that you use sometimes that just kind of transport me somewhere. And some of those words were around, smotherhood is really about how we fantasize about the supportive mother, and we have in the pit the challenging mother, and that in fact, loving the challenging mother is what inoculates your child from subordinating.
Yes. So this has been a big one that I've just had, I'm hashing out with a client at the moment. And because this is the whole thing, the way that the perfect mother myth is set up is that we often measure ourselves against this supportive hallmark version of mothering, which is just that I'm present to my child, that we live in harmony, that it's this beautiful connecting experience. And so if we personally ourselves had anything different to that, then we will demonize our mother for all the way she didn't measure up. And yet what I see is that many of those times where our mother didn't measure up to that and didn't fulfill this fantasy of almost preempting every developmental need of ours and walking across the threshold of that with us in connection and in celebration at every time we needed her. If we had a mother that breaks the fantasy of that, then often actually that can be the permission to be our own person. Because instead of holding her up and losing ourselves in her because of her perfection, we see at a young age her humanness and our separateness Because when she challenges, like when anyone challenges us, we are often repulsed to that person and we come back into connection to ourselves. And the value of that as a child is that we are often less likely to subordinate to the very, very influential figures that are our parents. Mm. And therefore try to emulate them or look for their approval, and therefore make our world tiny as a result. Because if it's not going to fit my mother's approval, then I won't do that, because my mother represents my safety and my life.
Even if that goes against your purpose,
yes,
your intrinsically aligned value system.
Yes, because if you learned that you are only worthy based on your mother's celebration of you, then that's a very shaky sense of worth and selfhood. Versus if at a younger age, your mother, you have the stinging remarks in your awareness of her casting you out in some way, or of her, withdrawing love in a way that feels painful, that in the very way that can be perceived by us as taking away our love or taking away love, it can actually be life-giving.
Yes.
Because it's like handing your life to you and going, where do you want to steer it? Versus I steer it for you.
I just felt like, I don't know, I was about to say a breath of fresh air, but something more than that. I felt more cleansing, like a shower.
I mean, I think the value of us looking at this is because when we head down a conscious parenting path, we head down this path because on some level we feel like something was missing in our childhood, or on some level we feel, we look at our children as a reflection of us and of some of the unloved parts of us. And so we seek to remedy them. But what can happen is we lose ourselves and become so entangled with their experience that we cannot separate ourselves from it. And that's not really healthy for us and for our own life force, which we will come to resent at some point. And it's not healthy for our children. So we really wanted to give you some tips or practices to build that skill set around, how do I lean back when I notice that my worth is entangled with my child, when I notice that I beat myself up the minute I lose my temper with them and I make it mean I've harmed them and they're going to be in therapy for life. If I have these habits, then what do I need to build to be able to lean back and hand over a little bit more of my child's life to them?
Yeah. Yes. So I'm going to start number one here, which for me, obviously we're going to have different pinpoints of consciousness on how we enter this conversation. One of the pinpoints of consciousness that I would like to raise and bring forwards for all of us, just to kind of sit in and tease out a little bit for ourselves, is the concept that what I perceive is most missing in this is a reconciled, healthy father force. So if we consider internally, we have a father force and we have a mother force. We could call that masculine and feminine, but I want to focus more on the archetypal language of father force and mother force. And that we have a blueprint for that based on our own childhood experience of mother and father. But that beyond that, we have a deep archetypal knowledge of what a healthy version of each of those are. So I don't know that any of us experience the perfect mother or father, but that doesn't mean we can't have a beautifully healthy mother and father force internally.
And I think that's a good point to emphasize, is that we don't want to get caught in the, well, I didn't get that, so I don't know how.
Yes.
We want to look, okay, well, what does it look like to have that?
Right. Because we've got to remember that all of these archetypes have a light side and they have a shadow side. So there's a beautiful, healthy, masculine father force that can flip into, like a seesaw, can go so far it goes too far, and now we're in toxic masculine internally.
Controlling,
whipping, degrading, punishing, all of the things. And we can have a healthy mother force that's nurturing and nourishing and continues to grow whatever it desires to. And we can have that go so far that now it's toxic motherhood and it's now inhibiting growth, ours or others. So we have to realize internally for ourselves when we've taken that archetype too far, and now it's tipped into a version of that toxicness. Yeah. Toxic is a strong word, so I don't know, insert other word for that I can't think of right now. But we have to recognize when that seesaw's tipped. And we have the power to bring it back into alignment and use it at its most healthy, vital force. So the father force within all of us knows that what I want for you is to grow and rise in your magnificence, in your lifetime, to create a better world. And it knows that the way to do that will mean that you need grit. And sometimes you're going to have to do stuff that's hard, that's challenging, that you don't want to do. But you need to, and you have to show up for those things. It's do or die.
Yes.
Because if you don't, you and the world will suffer. So the father force, this is where we say challenge, competitiveness, goading to rise higher can be incredibly healthy and healthful when it's used with a beautiful father force.
And this is also where it's not the product always with the kids, or often it's the process. It's how did this process they were taken through, or I took them through, or their father took them through, how did that process help them develop all of those things? So that it's less about performance necessarily. It's about what did they have to gather on the way.
Yeah.
Which the smothering mother can inhibit.
Yes,
right?
Because she does for you. She removes and sweeps away challenge.
She's the one who creates boys who don't know how to wash clothes when they're 18 and they leave house, right? Yes. Like the one who
don't grow responsibility, don't show up beyond what they feel like.
Yes. So the very act of the smothering mother is disempowering to that child. So this father force comes into, I guess, self-check, that smothering, to say, is this actually best for this child right now? Even though it might feel good for me to come in and rescue, or feel good for me to come in and smooth this over, is this actually the best thing for this child?
Yes. Correct.
And can I hold them and me in the tension of this difficulty?
Yes. So here's where we want to love the challenging mother, or the challenging aspect of motherhood, because there will be times, particularly as your children grow further into their adulthood or towards their adulthood, that they will be faced with decisions that have big life impacts. And often your role in parenting is not to give them what's most comfortable, but to give them with your vision that your father force has for what's possible for them. Sometimes a bit of a bitter pill that's like, I know, but this is really important. You must show up for this.
Yeah.
Because you know there's a vision that's like, you have to do this thing because I see your vision of your life progress better than you do right now because you're stuck in the feeling of it. Yeah. So I'm going to remind you of the bigger vision, which is the father force, and where you're headed. And I'm going to be there. I'll walk alongside you while you do it, but I will not do it for you. And then you'll reach the goals that you have for your life. So there's a part of parenting that goes, I know it doesn't feel good. I know you don't want to, but this is why you have to.
Yeah. And that is parenting for the long game.
Yes.
That is parenting beyond your own gratification, or beyond your own feelings, right?
Yeah, right. It's moving into the masculine force, which is vision, versus the feminine force, which is how I feel right now.
Yeah. It's a great way to explain it.
So number one is we really want you to reconcile your own father force, or your father force blueprint. So you're comfortable in witnessing someone you love in challenge, building your comfort for that.
Do you feel, brief sojourn, do you feel personally that you had a father force in your father and a mother force in your mother? Or do you feel like it was, because I think my mother had both.
Oh, I'm sure they did have both, but I still wonder how much the stereotyped gender actually has a blueprint. I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be 100% nuance, right?
Yeah.
But I'm interested in that level of polarization, I suppose, or stereotype, how much that sets us up.
Yes.
And I do think that's where my father's spiritual practice came in, because he was incredibly good. The way that I watch coaches with my son now, incredibly good at standing on the sidelines, whatever that sideline is, not offering for it to be easier, not making it easier, not even moving into support structures that would provide more comfort, but simply standing there with a solid presence on the sidelines of life or the court or whatever it is, going, you can do this.
Yeah.
And he 100% did that. I think that was his spiritual practice. Like he could witness the craziness and be like, yeah, it's not about me. I don't need to get emotionally entangled. You can have a vision.
And that unwavering solidness is actually what children need to borrow.
Right.
It's what that healthy structure that is unwavered and unwavering is exactly what that father force is.
Yeah.
It says, you know, like beyond how you feel right now,
yeah,
you're going to get there.
Yeah. And I'm not getting sucked into the tussle of life and emotion and making it about anything or anyone or me, or getting lost in the, you know, frustration and the emotion. I'm not getting entangled in energy and life. I'm something bigger and greater with a bigger and greater vision for you, this moment, your life. And I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
Like how much would we all love that?
Yeah.
You know, even Bridgie, you and I, as we navigate ourselves through business, how beautiful would it be as we're having a tantrum going, this is fucked and this isn't working and I don't want to do this anymore and so said this, and having our total human feminine collapse moment.
Yes.
To have a beautiful father force that stands on the sidelines, says nothing, watches it, witnesses it without judgment and shame, and then says, here's where I reckon you could do better.
Yeah.
And here's the big vision. How are you getting there? Right?
Yeah. And I think it's underestimated too, the value of that value of that quiet holding, just like anchored, got you, see where you want to go. Yes, this is hard. You can do it.
Yeah, exactly. This podcast is brought to you by what we have going on in the world that you can jump in on. And Bridgie, what's there for you?
Yes, at bridgetwood.life you can find the Christmas Survival Guide. So it is a 4-week supported email series to really help you feel centered, aligned with your vision at Christmas, and supported in your nervous system so that it can be one where you rewrite narratives that perhaps feel really tired, and that you really find the win-win and the beautiful connection that you're so desiring in your Christmas. And you, Jules?
You can grab my sexy Christmas date. So what you get is an easy to follow, sexy and sensual couples date that comes with a 20-minute guided tantric date workshop video that you get to follow along, press play and follow along. You can gift your partner a special experience or gift each other. Comes with a downloadable PDF guide and a whole heap of sexy playlists. And you can find out more about that at julietenner.love/sexy Christmas. Point number 2, which Bridgie is going to lead us through, is flip your fantasy of support.
Yeah. So what creates a lot of the pain and a lot of the running of the story and the seeking in our own mothering to, I guess, emancipate, right? To kind of like heal is this infatuation that we have of support, and infatuation that's the right way to parent, or that's the right way we should have been parented, was with more support. But to break this fantasy, really, because the universe is offering us both support and challenge all of the time, we just only see one, is to look at the value in the moment that we're most judging from our childhood or from our child's experience, and look at the value in that moment and the moment since where you perceive that your mother didn't support you. And if you're feeling guilty towards your child, look at the value in that moment to your child of you not supporting them, or of them perceiving you not supporting them. And you want to look at that and notice where your moral language comes in and just says, oh, but you know, you just should, that's what you should do as a mother. That's internalized sociology of motherhood. Okay, that's not truth. I want you to look really clearly and find the benefits, because there will be them. And the degree to which you can't find them or are unwilling to find them is participating in the pain you have right now. Because the trigger is trying to help you see what you couldn't see then. Because there will be value for you in those experiences of being unsupported, perceiving that you were unsupported by your mother, who was supporting you, who was connected to you. In that moment where you know, your infatuation with her was broken, perhaps because you just realized she couldn't meet you. Did you meet yourself for the first time? Did you now, you know, take her off this perfect pedestal of godlike reverence, and in doing so were able to connect with your own power and your own authority.
Well, that gave you permission to do that for the rest of your life.
Yeah. So because as humans we typically subordinate, the value of having an imperfect mother who you perceive challenged you just as much as she supported you is that you don't run illusions of perfection. You don't run illusions that of her righteousness and of her, you know, all-seeing, all-knowing truth. You found that for yourself. And so you're no longer subordinating at whatever age it was that that fantasy was cracked for you. How has that been life-giving to you? That moment that it felt like your life and your fantasy of who she was going to be for you was, you know, pulled out from underneath you, and you perceived that she was taking life from you. Well, where was she giving life to you? Where in that challenge was she saying, this is your life?
We forget as parents that so much of our job, and I wonder sometimes the value is not more of what we don't do than what we do. More of where we choose not to entangle versus where we do entangle. I think in conscious parenting, we focus so much on what we do and where we do entangle. I don't know, but the older I get and the more perhaps spiritual practice, or dare I say consciousness, I bring to myself and my relational dynamics, my children included, is that the times that we don't entangle or we choose not to are potentially the most profound.
Yeah. I even think about that in the tiny things, like, you know, our kids getting to that age where they can go off to the milk bar on their own, or they can go to a sleepover, and like who they come back as because you weren't there.
Yeah. Or just that there's so much consciousness even in where our, in inverted commas, flawed parents choose not to entangle. You know, like the deepest realization for me of this was when I went back to a moment where I perceived it was my father, where I perceived an enormous amount of projection and shame and judgment. And it had been this moment that had sat in my body all my life. And it was the moment that I came back to, I don't know if you had a similar moment, but I came back into the family home, no longer a virgin. Do you remember that feeling?
No.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, this is life purpose, right?
Yes, right.
I mean, so much of the threads that I'm going to pull are going to have direct correlations to my sexual journey. So this is a very profound moment in my life.
Yes.
And I had gone away for the weekend camping with my boyfriend for the first time. And so it was this very clear, no longer this assumption, are they, aren't they, is she, isn't she, all this unsaid kind of stuff. It was this very clear line in the sand. My parents now knew that I was a sexually active adult. And I knew that he knew that. And I remember walking back into the house, and it was this huge amount of suppressive feeling in me of shame. And he couldn't even look at me. And this moment went on for what I perceived to be forever.
Yeah.
And in unpacking that moment, what I realized was in front of me was this father force, this tantric yogic practitioner who, by all measures, has sexual mastery or sexual energy mastery. And how consciously in that moment did he choose not to entangle with my own conscious sexual awakening and opening? Like he removed his overlays, his tentacles, his stories, his oppressions by, in a way, turning his back on me in that experience, which hurt child me was like, oh my God, I'm so rejected. And yet soul me now goes back and goes, what a fucking gift.
Yeah.
Where we consciously don't entangle perhaps is the most profound parenting we'll ever do. So the master of sexuality let me have my own sexuality. He didn't include his.
Yeah. Which is like, you know, the ultimate practice, right? Particularly like the ego would want to, because it's something that you identify with, right? So you want to share your identity, but he
consciously didn't look at me.
The more masterful thing was actually to completely pull back from your experience to let it be your experience.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just an interesting story. Point number 3 is we really want you to take pause in those moments and ask, am I making this about me or my child? Because often we think we're making it about our child and it's totally about us.
Yeah.
Can I give you a moment where I did that recently?
Sure.
So my third child, Lola, who has a lot of additional needs, is probably, and I say this with a huge amount of love, but is probably rarely one of those high achieving children who is going to get lots of accolade and awards and things like that in her lifetime, that just she will move in different ways in the world. And she was getting a school award at the school awards ceremony, which at some point I'd known about. And then when the day came around, had completely forgotten about. So I didn't go to the awards ceremony. So my daughter, who never gets awards, got presented an award, and her mother or her parent, the perfect mother, wasn't there. And that was reaffirmed to me by the fact that some of my friends sent me pictures because they were horrified I wasn't there. They were like, what has happened? So, if you can imagine, Lola gets back home from school and she's, I've got this award, and I watched my shame and my guilt hit me like a crushing wave that I almost couldn't breathe out of. That I realized in that same moment, I was making her experience so about me and my mother guilt that I wasn't even present to her celebration.
Because you got completely consumed by
I'm completely consumed by my own experience. I'm not a mother in her experience, which is she got an award, celebrate me.
Yeah.
I'm so lost in myself.
That, hang on a sec, I wasn't there. I should be there. What happened?
This moment that should be my child's, I've made all about me. So I had to do a 360 on myself and go, this is not about you. Stop making this about you, because you're using guilt and shame to take this moment as yours. Which, of course, is my biggest mother trigger. So how much like my mum am I in another form? Which, the irony of all of that is not lost on me. But I literally, this is the point we're talking about. Really and truly in this moment, are you making this about your child and their true experience, or about you?
It's just such a good one to ask, because the nature of our entanglement with our children, and particularly if you've got a big identity around mothering, there are going to be times where 100% it's about you. And the practice is, okay, I need to pull back now. Why am I needing this right now? Why am I needing to make this about me? What would it look like to hand it over to my child? And what do I need to be able to do that?
Yeah.
Which comes back to the smotherhood, and is it more individuation?
Yes. And is it the realization that you have a wound that's being hit up here, and it's your job to raise yourself and just kind of pin that over there while you're present to your child's experience, knowing you'll come back to that wound, rather than living out the wound of the past in the present moment and smothering that all over your child like peanut butter.
Yeah.
So there are 3 lean back skill set tips that we would love to hear how you go with: reconciling your father force, flipping your fantasy of support so that you're more comfortable with challenge, and am I making this truly about me or my child, and can I move beyond? So we would love to hear how you go with it. Please reach out to us at nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Facebook and Instagram. And Bridgie, what have you got going on in the world?
Yes, all things Reimagining Motherhood. We're coming up to the beginning of the new year. So we're going to be doing a process around, in the past we've called it Amplify. And it's a little bit like that, but it's more around setting your year, so your motherhood. And really we're going to be tackling a lot of these smotherhood themes, because part of mothering is addressing at certain stages of ourselves and our development as mothers, but also our child's development. How much am I inserting myself in my child's experience versus actually what do I need for me, and what permission do I need to create for myself to be able to follow my path alongside my child following theirs, and not me in it all of the time. So that's what we're going to be looking at.
And we jump in on that where?
At bridgetwood.life. And you, Jules?
I have still the sexy Christmas date. So just remove Christmas and just be like, I'm going to get myself 20-minute guided date that we can gift each other, or I can just give as a gift to my partner. It's just a beautiful way to bring connection to yourself, to your body, and for both of you to pick up some interesting curiosity about each other and each other's bodies and sensuality, and also just about yourself. Oh yeah, I remember this part of me. So you can find out more about that at julietenner.love/sexy Christmas.
Remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.